All right, let's get into the international panel. As I said before the break, a majority of Americans, I think that President Joe Biden is not in control of his own administration. It's a bombshell poll. The survey from the Trafalgar Group, one of the only pollsters to correctly predict Donald Trump's election win back in 2016, shows that 57% of Americans do not think Joe Biden is fully executing the duties of his office. Just 36% think he's leading his own policy agenda. To discuss this and more, from Sydney, co-host of Outsiders, James Morrow, and from Sydney, Executive Director of the Centre for Independent Studies, Tom Switzer. James, these numbers confirm what we've been thinking all along. Biden's a figurehead in office. He's not in power. Who's really running the show?
Well, that's a really great question, Pete, and I think the American people, and in fact, I think everybody around the world would like to know the answer to that question. I have a suspicion that it feels like a sort of a late Byzantine kind of court situation there, where you have lots of different factions at play, all trying to have control of the agenda. So you would have absolutely an Obama faction, that wants Biden's administration to essentially be their third term. You'd have Kamala Harris's people there, who are all trying to take control of things from the president, although we've seen them not really do too well with that, with some of their border debacles. And you'd have probably other power groups within the White House as well. But it's pretty clear that from everything Joe Biden has been doing and saying, that he's not running the show. I mean, we saw just the other day, he actually needed cue cards and note cards to deal with a pre-prepared question from somebody. It's just unbelievable.
Tom, I've got to say, I mean, the pollster here is reputable. Those numbers are high. It's a majority of Americans. I mean, I've worked in government. I'm not anti-Biden because I don't like the Democrats. I've watched him closely, as I'm sure you have. He doesn't look compos mentis. Honestly, doesn't look compos mentis. What's your assessment?
Well, you have to remember he did campaign as a mainstream centre-left Democrat. But in power, it's quite evident he is a Trojan horse for the increasingly activist left wing that dominates today's Democratic Party. So I can see why a lot of those Americans in the middle who voted for him feel cheated. On the other hand, you have to remember America is consumed by deep divisions, toxic polarisation, self-doubt, and there's a widespread sense that things are badly off track. If you look at all the available public opinion polling, it shows that trust in American institutions has fallen. This goes beyond left and right, goes beyond Trump and Biden. I think it's a cultural crisis, notwithstanding the fact that America still has a lot of wonderful attributes, including the fact that it's the most powerful nation in the world and it has a very good higher education system, despite the increasing intolerance on university campuses.
Yeah, but what about his mental acuity, Tom?
Well, look, the same thing was said about Ronald Reagan many times, but Biden's a lot older than Reagan was. I mean, Reagan was elected when he was 69. Biden is in his late 70s. And he's not really as sharp and sound as you'd want in a commander-in-chief, but I don't think we need to press the panic button quite yet.
Yeah, it's worth watching, though. It's a worry. Donald Trump's taking on big tech, James.
Yes, so this is a really important thing that's happening here. Now, Donald Trump, we don't know what he's going to do about the next presidential election, but he quite clearly wants to get back at big tech. This is a big problem for Republicans, who many mainstream ones weren't considered to be strong enough in their fight against big tech when he was there in office. But I'll tell you what, the American people are on his side. And if I can, read you a few numbers from a poll that's just come out, Rasmussen, 47% of American voters think that big tech actively supported Joe Biden. Democrats, by a 3-to-1, think that they supported Biden over Trump and were able to swing votes that way. There's a big concern that since big tech has protection under something called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, they can basically do whatever they want and be both a publisher and a platform. But people are saying, no. This is now like the phone company. They've got to be, a neutral broker. They've got to be a town square. They've got to respect the First Amendment. Your telephone company can't cut you off because they don't like what you say. And that's exactly what these outfits like Facebook and Twitter and some of the big tech search engines are doing right now. So it's offending American sense of fair play. Trump is on a winner with this campaign. I don't know about in the courts, but certainly politically.
Yes, and remember, Trump's removal from social media was quite unprecedented. And it's just going to backfire, as James has just said, because it'll just cause more Republican voters and politicians to rally around Trump.
Tom, you know the region well. Japan's come out and pledged that it'll join the US if needed, if it gets to that point, to defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. This is a big deal.
Well, it is indeed. And Japan coming out so strongly in favour of Taiwan is very revealing. I mean, it's a reminder that the Australian anxiety, and despite what you hear from the critics, it's not hysteria or panicking. It's a genuine anxiety about China. This is widely held around the region. Kevin Rudd, among other critics of Canberra's China policy, he always says in the past year that Australia should be more like Japan, more nuanced and tone down the bombast and rebuild trust with the Chinese Communist Party and hedge between Washington and Beijing. Well, the critics are wrong. Japan sounds more hawkish on China than Australia. And Japan's not alone. If you look all around the region, you've got India, Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, so on and so forth. They're increasingly anxious about China's bullying, and those states want the United States to help lead efforts to check Beijing's regional ambitions. So Australia is not alone here.
James, just quickly, I've been playing some images tonight out of Britain. They haven't even got to Freedom Day. They're a lot freer than you guys are tonight are in Sydney. They've also got a benefit for vaccination. I mean, they're saying if you're vaccinated, you're not going to have to self-isolate. You're not going to have to do quarantine. I think if you want to drive vaccination in Australia, that's what has to be on the table, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly right, Peter. You know, I've had both of my Pfizer jabs, and I am subject to every single restriction here in Sydney that everybody else is. You know, I think we've got this variant of COVID here. I call it the Australian variant. You don't get COVID. It still makes you miserable, and the vaccine doesn't actually do anything to fight it.
James Morrow, what a lovely note to end the night on. That is very, very astute. James Morrow, Tom Switzer, thank you for your time.